it's time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
I'd like to welcome everybody today to On the Farm in Alabama, and today as my guest I have Dr. Steve Brown, who is the Alabama Extension Cotton Specialist. Steve, the last 3 years have been really tough as far as harvest, and it seems like they're getting progressively worse. We had just a perfect harvest in 2016, and now it seems like there's a lot of negative consequences, not only yield, but we had a lot of problems with cotton quality, and probably the biggest one that we have and the biggest comments I got from growers is cotton seed coat fragments. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. If we look back on the 2020 season, actually, in my view, a big picture view, fiber quality is much better than I thought it would be in terms of color, and maybe color is a little down, but staple, strength, micronair, those are much better than I thought we would deliver. But the seed coat fragment issue has been very disappointing. In fact, it's probably on record in the classing system. It's unprecedented to see this much. And the cotton from Alabama that goes to the Macon classing office, which is about 60% of the crop this year, so I think I calculated somewhere just below that. But it has 40% seed coat fragments. As you go to Memphis, that number is only about 0.4%. But you did see some of that in North Alabama as well. But seed coat fragments exist. What we're seeing is portions of the seed are ripped open and make it into the lint fraction, and it becomes a great challenge in the spinning process. It greatly reduces that. So I think primarily it's a sign of weathering, and we had hurricanes, and we had, contrast to most years when we have a hurricane, the hurricane blows through, the next day it's bright, sunny, beautiful, breezy, and things dry out fairly rapidly. This year it seemed, particularly from Hurricane Sally, which probably affected the lower half of the state in a great way. We had buckets of rain, maybe 10 to 20 plus inches of rain, and then we had 2 weeks thereafter where we had cloudy conditions and we didn't fare off, and we just stayed overcast and humid, and I think that led to a good bit of degradation in the field, particularly of the seed. Seed coat fragments are seed breaking, but it's also sometimes immature seed making it through into the lint fraction as well.
Yeah, what's the deduction that normally a grower gets with the...
It's an extraneous matter penalty, and that deduction I believe is 4.7 cents for a level 1. And level 2 means it's much worse, and I don't know that we had much of that at all, but level 1 I believe is 4.7 cents a pound.
Well, all this poor harvest weather, we were really having a good crop set,
yeah.
And especially up here in North Alabama. And the problem is that all the hurricanes and the poor weather that we got, we really hurt our yield. What are we looking at overall for the average yield in Alabama?
We're playing with numbers, but I believe running bales are going to be somewhere finish up right at 700,000. That's the latest numbers I've seen, maybe the first week or so through February, and the jetting reports keep dwindling each week. So we probably will get to 700,000. I think that's going to put us on average around 775, something like that. I think last year we delivered over 1 million bales, 1,028,000 bales. This year, again, when you do the adjustment to a 480-pound bale, we may deliver 720 or 30,000 bales. So a big disappointment last year to this year, and a big disappointment of what we thought we had in the field as we approached early September.
Oh, we definitely had the cotton in the field. It's just the poor weather, the poor harvest conditions. We had quite a bit of boll rot and hard lock, and especially hard lock with all that, cloudy weather after the hurricanes.
Right. Very, very frustrating to have a crop you think, hey, this is going to be a good one, and then it to be taken away. I think if you watch the USDA estimates the crop beginning August 1, and they came down every time. We're probably almost 200 pounds off of what they originally estimated, maybe even a little more than that.
Well, we're fortunate that we're getting some better prices
Yes.
for cotton, and maybe some of those farmers that didn't contract the cotton can take advantage of these 80+ cent contracts.
And as we look to the 2021 crop, December futures, as of this morning or a few minutes ago, maybe was around 82.5 cents. So that's a positive, and obviously, globally speaking, the market is going to have to bid to get U.S. cotton acres because of the attractive prices in soybeans and corn.
Steve, probably one of the things that growers are asking me about is at this time, and they're always making this decision, and that is, what should I plant? What variety should I plant?
The variety selection process there, maybe the list of varieties is this long. The first fork in the road in my mind is you got to know which herbicide technology you're going to use. You've got Extend, which is the dicamba base, and you have multiple brands, maybe 5 brands of cottonseed that come with Extend, or you've got the Enlist trait from Corteva, which is the 2,4-D trait. Those don't mix, or if you mix them on a farm, you better segregate them nicely. So you got to make that decision. Do I go all one technology, or can I in fact plant both? And again, I'll repeat what I just said. If you plant them both, you better do a very good job of defining, say, this maybe down below the highway, all those fields are this and the rest of them are this. So,
well, not only do you need to separate the fields, you got to make absolutely sure that you got your tank cleaned or use a different tank when you're spraying herbicides.
yeah, equipment clean out is critical as well, because it can be a very, very frustrating and painful result if you don't. So that's the first step. Then I think you got to look back on what you're familiar with. Unless you've got good reason to displace something, you're probably going to keep your standards that have performed well for you the last 2 or 3 years. You want to look at data, and with the university, certainly we've got the small plot data, which would be conducted at Belmont, Prattville, and other places. So you examine that data, but that list is extremely long. You also can see the university, and you participate, I know, in these trials, the large-scale on-farm trials, which are replicated, but they're farmer equipment, farmer harvest, farmer production practices, and real-world experience. But those, it's a narrow set of varieties. This year it's 12, and so you have opportunity to see how those performed. And so you got your list, and you think about your data, the data that you can see, and so you begin to make some selections. You might also, what's the coffee shop talk? You know, was this a star or was this a dud? Those might be things that I might add in or displace. And I normally think you should look at, on a farm, maybe 3 to 5 varieties would dominate, maybe 3 or 4. But also, because we're always in a transition on technology and varieties, I'm going to be taking a look at least a couple of new varieties. Maybe they only occupy a couple of fields, or maybe a little bit more, maybe no more than maybe 10% of my acres, but I'm trying to gain experience with what's going to displace my current lineup and my current stars. So that I haven't given you any exact numbers, but that kind of gives you a framework on how to think and how to approach that decision.
And a lot of the older varieties that we have may only be Bogart 2 cotton. We're transitioning into this 3-gene cotton now,
Yeah.
and so that's one thing that we're going to see some of the older varieties phased out rather quickly, and the new varieties with the 3-gene cotton phased in.
Well, I think clearly U.S.-wide, Delta Pine 1646 has been the most widely planted variety. Same holds true for Alabama. It's done extremely well. In the test plots in the OVT program last year, it was middle of the pack. If I'm a farmer and I've been planting it, I'm still going to plant it. But we're going to have it this year. We're going to probably have it next year. But its replacement, or its need to be replaced, is certainly on the horizon. So I need to be figuring out what's going to take over, what's going to dominate after I leave 1646, or because of availability or because of the insect traits or whatever.
Well, not only that is we're seeing that we're getting the trait of nematode resistance in these varieties, not only the southern root knot nematode, but also one that is a big problem up here in North Alabama, and that is the reniform nematode.
Dr. Kathy Lawrence at Auburn has done a considerable amount of work, and she's got some great field sites to work in North Alabama to explore that question, and she's very excited about the new reniform resistant varieties. And at least a couple of companies will have varieties that have reniform resistance. There will be some varieties also that deliver both reniform and root knot resistance in the same variety. So that's an exciting change and turn as we approach the 2021 season. And if I've got some reniform problems, I'm gonna stick those in some fields to take a look at them.
Yeah. One question I get asked by farmers quite a bit, and then there's a lot of variability on opinions on this, but they want to know about cotton seeding rate. You've done a lot of work on this. What would you say would be the ideal cotton seeding rate for dryland or irrigated?
And I'll say my bias is more southern than probably where we sit today. So I'm comfortable in that 2 to 2.5 seed per foot range. I think as we move in North Alabama, that farmer's going to think, that man's crazy. So, you know, 3.5. I don't like too thick cotton. I don't like spindly stalks, and I don't like paying more than I have to to get a stand. So I'm going to probably be up here. I'm going to be in that 3 range, and if I've been using 3.5 or 4, and I've got the fancy dancy dial on the planter that I'm going to play a little bit and try to gain some comfort on a little bit thinner populations. I will say it's very rare, in my opinion. I did know of one experience last year, but it's very rare to have to replant because you didn't put out enough seed. You replant because of seeding disease or herbicide injury or some other disasters. So again, I want to be less because I want to pay less, but I also want a more robust stalk. So that's kind of my view. What's your view?
Well, I think probably in the 2.5 to 3 seed per foot of row is it's kind of a balance between how much you're paying with technology fee and getting enough cotton plants up and healthy and growing to give you a good yield. You know, if you can have one cotton plant every foot of row that was evenly spaced, you do good, but you can't do that.
Right. And I think if you're on 30-inch rows, you need to be a little thinner than you might be on a 40-inch row. So,
and we have a lot of growers that are planting modified skip cotton. And one thing you've done work on, and we'll end up on this, is that I noticed back in the early 90s, every magazine was talking about going to 30-inch rows. And our growers were very excited about this because they could use the same planter that they use for corn and soybeans. But as we narrowed our rows, our yield got less. So you're doing some work on widening our rows, and it seems like we get maybe some yield increases.
Well, we've played with the idea of wide rows, and I've looked at studies where you had 72-inch rows and 60-inch rows, and those are easy to do from a research and a play standpoint because you got planters that fit those configurations. You just stop up the planter and you take some yields that way. I saw some trials in the wiregrass, and it's a sandy site, not well irrigated, which is, again, is a far cry from where we are today. But I didn't think, I thought the 60 and even the 60 and 72 were too wide. I thought we missed a lot of light capture. And so I said, all right, I did, and 60 fits great math-wise. But basically what I've worked at this past year at a couple of sites, I used 48-inch cotton. And we actually subsoiled under the row. In a bigger situation, if you needed to, you could do one of these horizontal or diagonal under row tillages if you needed to do that. But the objectives are probably threefold. One is I want to pay less for seed and technology. And if with the same down the road seeding rate you can do that, you've saved a third. You know, from a 36-inch row to a 48-inch row, if you plant the same amount of seed total per acre, you save 33%. You've also saved, if you can pick up the same amount of cotton, if you pick it with 5 heads versus 6, I can't calculate that, but I think you probably save money. But a couple of other things that make it attractive in a stressed year with more soil from which the plant can draw moisture, you may survive a mid-season, you may endure a mid-season drought a little better. And so you got some drought tolerance maybe to get you a little farther down the road. And then the final thing is when we get to season end and you've got a little wider road, you may get a little better airflow and therefore reduce some issues with hard lock and bowl rot if they are problematic in an area. So that's kind of the motive there. My two studies this past year, one at Bruton and one at Headland, yields were comparable with both systems. So I was excited to see that. We'll keep playing with that concept. It's outside the box, and maybe sometimes we need to think outside the box.
I definitely agree with that. Want to thank everybody for being with us today on the farm, and for Steve for being with us. And tune in next time when we have another edition of On the Farm in Alabama.